I'm going to talk to you about, let me get it the right way around, that might help. Workplace health and well-being, but mainly about food and nutrition, really. And the reason I want to talk to you about that is because ultimately, as humans, we all have health, and we have physical and mental health. And as a human being, we run on a continuum from optimum health to poor health. And during our lifetime, that happens continuously. So some days we're feeling really, really healthy, we have lots of energy, and other days we might wake up and not have so much energy. And the reason I talk to businesses about this, because if you employ anybody, or even if you just employ yourself as a single person business, your health impacts on how you feel. And how you feel impacts on how you perform and how productive you might be in your business. As a nation, we haven't got a health service. I believe we have a sick service. As a nation, we're getting sicker and sicker. We're getting fatter and fatter. And it costs our economy nearly £60 million a year with people being off sick with work-related illness and injury. And you might think, okay, I'm not a big company, so that doesn't cost me much. But actually, that cost is broken down, and 50% of that cost is actually borne out of from the individual actually has to take some of the brunt of that cost. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how, during the day, what can you do to improve your health and the productivity of your workforce, or even yourself if you're a single-person business. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the heroes and villains of the lunchbox. So just talk to you about what you can do on a daily basis that may impact on how you perform, how you think, how you feel in the workplace. Because ultimately, whatever you put in your mouth to eat as fuel will impact on how you feel, how you think, how you behave, how you move. Ultimately, we would not fuel Formula 1 cars with chip fat. So why do we think that us eating chip fat or beige food will give us anything other than beige mood and beige lives? So it is about thinking about the food you put in your body is reflective of how you feel. So the first thing is stay hydrated. It might seem an obvious thing, but we know that most people in the UK are dehydrated at any one time. So just drink more water. It doesn't just have to be water. It can be any type of fluid, including the fluid you get with water retained within fruit and vegetables. And if you think you're hungry, have a drink. Because we know that most people nowadays can't tell the difference between hunger and thirst. So actually, if you think that you're hungry, I often suggest to my clients and the workforces I work with, have a drink. If 10 minutes later you're still hungry, then you are hungry, but most people are actually thirsty and they don't recognise the two symptoms. So have a drink. It's recommended that you have 2 litres a day. That's the kind of a government standard for the average person. I don't know anybody who's average. I mean, none of us are average. We're amazing. We're awesome people. We're amazing. But about 2 litres a day, roughly. But that's dependent on your build, your activity levels, your environment you work in. Feed your brain. Our brains, roughly, again, average, our brain size is roughly 1/10 of our body mass is our brain. Our brain actually uses 25% of our calories. So 25% of all the food you put in will fuel your brain. So again, if you are putting in fuel such as beige food, then you can't expect your brain to work effectively on that. So what I would recommend is people to eat good fats. So when we talk about fat, a lot of people think fat is a demon. It's not. We have fat, and not all fats are equal. You have good fat and bad fat. So your good fats, so your omega fats, so your essential fatty acids, and the reason we call them essential is because we need to get them from our diet. We need them to put them into our body. Our body can't produce them themselves, so they're classed as essential. And the way I remember it is the 2 areas are omega-3 and omega-6. Is omega-3 comes from the sea. So that's kind of a general classification. So your omega-3 fatty acids come from mainly oily fish, and then your omega-6 comes from trees. So that's the best way to remember it, really. It's not clear-cut as that, but if you remember your omega-3s come from the sea and your omega-6 come from trees, then you can kind of get that. And we would recommend people eat at least 2 to 3 portions of good fats every week. So 1 or 2 portions of oily fish and a good handful of nuts every so often. And these will help your brain work effectively. Your brain is 60% fat. So if you want good connections, good synapses, good brain activity, eat fat. Your vitamins and minerals, like I said, beige mood, beige food, beige food, beige mood. Vitamins and minerals. As much as we are quite simplistic organisms, we actually are really complex inside. And what I mean by eating this is eating a rainbow of fruit and veg every day. So eat all the different colours of the rainbow. Eat bright, colourful food because they contain nutrients. And the reason we want these nutrients is all the vitamins and minerals in our body are all synergistic. And they all help each other to do the jobs we need them to do. And especially with the B vitamins. So B vitamins are really crucial for two reasons. A, they help us manage our energy. So they help the body metabolize our food into energy. But they also help with creating neurotransmitters. Now, neurotransmitters are chemicals in the brain to help us function. And one of the neurotransmitters that we like is serotonin. Has everybody heard of serotonin? A few nods, yeah. So serotonin, feel-good chemical. It's the thing that makes us happy. And ultimately, our B vitamins help us do that. You get your B vitamins from whole grains. Lots of fruit and vegetables contain B vitamins, but whole grains mainly. So whole grain rice, whole grain pasta, whole grain bread. And the B vitamin is in the husk of the grain, so it's really important to eat the husk of the grain. And that's where you get your B vitamins from. And they will work synergistically with all your other nutrients to have effective energy production. Protein. Now, you probably hear a lot of protein, and I do a lot of fitness anyway, and you see that there's so much stuff around protein, but ultimately we do need protein in our diet. And two things about protein which is really great is I would include protein with every single meal I have, even if it's a snack or a meal. I'll include protein. And protein does two things for us. It not only keeps us fuller for longer, but it also fills us up as well. It also slows down the release of sugars. So if you eat just a very carb-heavy or sugar-heavy food, the energy is released quite quickly. Whereas if you eat protein with it, so say I have an apple with some nuts, for example, the protein takes longer, is harder for the body to break down. So in its essence, with it mixed in with the sugars from the apple, it will slow the release of the sugars. So therefore, I won't get such a sugar hit from the apple, for example. So protein is really important. It doesn't have to be meat protein. It can be vegetable or animals. It can be animal or vegetable source. But varying your protein sources is really important. And then balancing your blood sugar. So I'm just going to does people know about balancing their blood sugar? A little bit, maybe? Okay, so basically you imagine if you're not a secret eater, when you get up in the morning, you've got a low blood sugar because you've fasted for nearly maybe 6 to 7 hours as you sleep. So sometimes this is on an uncontrolled blood sugar person. So I've woken up in the morning and my blood sugar's low. I've not eaten for 8 hours. I've been asleep. And I eat a kind of a modern day breakfast, say a bowl of Cocoa Pops with some slices of white bread and some jam. And what happens there is that is really highly processed and high sugar. So what happens, I eat that food, my body breaks all that down into glucose, and glucose is our primary energy source. We only ever use glucose. So we break the Cocoa Pops down and the bread and the jam, and what happens is I get loads of sugar in my blood. So my sugar gets really high at this point here, and my body goes, you've got too much sugar in your blood, and sugar is actually poison. So we don't want high sugar levels in our blood. So our body naturally produces something called insulin, which you've probably all heard of. And what insulin does is take the sugar out of the blood into the cells. But what happens is, because it's so high and the body doesn't really know what to do with it, go back. It takes too much sugar out of the blood. And so I get to about 10 o'clock, give me sugar! Because by this point, I'm irrational, because I've actually not got enough sugar in my blood anymore. And my body doesn't know what to do with it. And the easiest way for my body to deal with it is for me to eat sugar. Because all my body will do is produce adrenaline at this point to take the sugar out of my cells back into my blood. But it's easier for me just to eat a Mars bar. So I eat a Mars bar mid-morning, and my sugar goes high. And then my sugar goes low. And I go this like kind of roller coaster of high sugar, low sugar. And if you can imagine that, and if you work with people who you might know about who do this, is you get hungry. I don't know if people know when you're hungry, you get a bit hungry, and they become a little bit narky, don't they? Mardy, whatever you want to call it. And this is often because people are having this roller coaster of high sugar and low sugar. So what you want to do is eat foods that does impact on your blood sugar, but not to such an extent where you get this kind of sugar low and sugar high. So eat a breakfast, for example, that is got carbohydrates in it, got some protein, got some fat in it. So porridge, we always use porridge as a really good example, but it could be something as scrambled egg on toast, or avocado on toast, or anything that's kind of not loaded with sugar, that's processed. And your sugar will go up a little bit, your body will produce some insulin, it'll take some of that sugar out the blood into the cells. You'll get a little sugar low in mid-morning. You might think, oh, I'm a bit hungry, I'll eat something else. But you won't be that irrational, give me sugar kind of reaction. And therefore, your blood sugar is nice and balanced through the day. Now, this gives you a much more constant energy through the day, which ultimately means you're more productive during the day. And then the last thing is to look at stimulants. So stimulants, I mean by caffeinated drinks, really. And if you think about it, every day we have 24 hours in a day, and I see those as 24 blocks of energy. Now, we can use that energy, so each hour you go through, you're using a block of energy as you go through each day. If you use something like stimulants to, say you had a bad night's sleep and you just need to get going, so you drink a cup of coffee in the mid-morning because you really need some energy to finish a piece of work. What you can see is ultimately caffeine is going to steal a block of energy from some time later in the day. So if I have a large cup of coffee or a can of Monster, if I want it to eat my insides, so if I want to have something caffeinated, so I've got that energy to finish that report I need getting done by midday, yes, I'm going to have that energy there and then I'm going to get the report for you. But at some point in the afternoon, it's going to catch up with me. So if you have like with the sugar, with stimulants, if you're going to have a high, you're going to get a low, because that's how the body works. So ultimately, if you are addicted to caffeine or you live on caffeinated drinks, remember you're going to have that low at some point. Like most people just stay caffeinated, don't they? They just medicate with caffeine. But ultimately, it's just remembering that you've got those 24 blocks of energy each day, and if you use them earlier in the day, you're going to have that energy lag at some point. So it's just thinking about, just being conscious about what you eat and how that affects your mood and how it affects people around you. If you aren't eating the foods that aren't making you good mood and give you good mood and good energy, how does that impact on other people around you? And how does that impact on your energy and how you show up and what you give to other people? We've been talking about, Alex talked about your people, and everybody's talked about people and your customers. And if you haven't got good energy, your customers are going to pick that up, really. If you haven't got that zip, that buzz around you, then that's going to actually impact on how you have your relationships. So it's just being aware that everything you put in your mouth, your food that you put in your mouth, the fuel that you fuel yourself with will impact. So it's just thinking that eating a rainbow every day and remembering that what you do is going to affect you. And I'm just going to finish on, if you want to know more about workplace health and well-being and what other factors impact on how people feel at work, I'm running a conference in 14th of May where we've got a range of speaking looking at well-being in the workplace in the broadest sense, holistic way, and how different things can impact on people. So we're looking at sleep and how sleep impacts on your well-being. Sleep is so underrated these days. People don't sleep as well as they should do, and therefore that impacts on your performance. The reason is sleep is so important that you can go 40 days without food or drink, but you can only go 4 days without sleep. So that does tell you something, how important sleep is for health. We've got a financial expert talking about how financial well-being can impact on your mental well-being. And so we are looking at lots of different ways that food and nutrition and well-being impacts on your employees or even yourselves if you're a one-person business, and how then that impacts on how you feel and then how impacts how well and how productive you are.